Hey everybody, what's good? I'm your host. My name is Professor Khalil Amani, and this is Khalil Amani's World 100. We're on part 6 of the Sodom and Gomorrah story. I invite you to go back to the introduction and work your way through parts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that you are really abreast of what the hell we talking about. But I always say, if you're a Billy Badass and you think you know about Sodom and Gomorrah, jump your behind right on in on this part 6. I assure you, most people don't know Sodom and Gomorrah like I know it. The litmus test as to whether you know what really happened in Sodom and Gomorrah is this. If you believe that Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed because they were homosexuals, then you don't know Sodom and Gomorrah. That's the litmus test. I know all of your ignorant Christian lives and all of your Israelite life, they have taught you that the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah was their homosexual lifestyle. And God didn't like that. So if you think that's the reason for the destruction of Sodom, you are already wrong. You're 1,000% wrong. You're 1,000,000,000% wrong. And I'm showing you why Sodom was destroyed. We haven't even got to the real meat and potatoes of why Sodom was destroyed. We're on part 6, and I haven't even explained to you why Sodom was destroyed. Because I like to be, methodical. I'm surgical with this shit. I'm not like other Bible teachers. They do 1 hour, 2 hours on a subject, and they think they have comprehensively mastered the narrative. No. It takes a lot. I go through methodically, point by point, to show you why these things work. You see, the problem for the Bible is this. The Bible does not give us any information on the inhabitants of Sodom. They don't tell us shit. I'm talking about the Bible. The Bible gives us no background, no backstory. The Bible doesn't tell us about the Sodomites and their religious beliefs. The Bible doesn't tell us about their cultural and their mores, their ethics. The Bible doesn't tell us shit about the Sodomites. We are only told that the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah were very grievous. What a very generic umbrella for God to say. What does it mean they were very grievous? Yeah. The Bible doesn't tell us what we need to know. The Bible does not tell us anything about Sodom. Believe it or not, the Sodomites were a religious people. But there's no indication that they believed in a higher power when you read the Bible. The Bible just simply is inept. That's why I'm amazed when people say, act like all is contained in the Bible. The Bible doesn't give you backstory about different nations and stuff like that. It just doesn't. You have to be able to go read the commentaries and read the scholars and read the people. Read the information about these cities, about these people, to understand how they were living. I mean, don't you find it weird or queer or interesting that Sodom's Lot, the guy known as Lot, could easily dispose of his virgin daughters for a mob outside? Don't you find it queer and weird and interesting that two supposed virgin girls, probably between 12 and 14 or so, would conjure up the ideal to get their father intoxicated just to have sex with him to further the human species? Don't you find that weird? Who does that? Why is sex an easy thing to administer and dispose of in Sodom? It's Sodom's Lot. Lot is quick to say, take my daughters and fuck them. They've never known a man. The daughters are quick to say, let's go fuck daddy and make some babies. Why is that? What was the culture of Sodom whereby these people would think of these sexual nastinesses to solve their problems? Nobody wants to talk about that. Young virgin girls just don't think out of the thin blue air, out of the sky, let's fuck our father and make babies. The only reason I suggest to you that these two girls, virgins, could come up with a harebrained scheme to get their father drunk and then to fuck him to get pregnant is that was the culture. That was the culture of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Zoar. The 5 cities collectively known as the cities of the plain or the cities of the valley. You don't just think of, as a teenage girl, as a 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old girl, you just don't conjure up fucking your father. You just don't. Not back then and not now. The only reason I suggest to you that these daughters could think about the nastiness of incest is that it was everywhere present around them when they were in Sodom and Gomorrah. And in fact, and indeed, that was the culture and the lifestyles of the people of Sodom. We're talking psychology right now. We're talking psychology. Lot, I said Lot, suggesting that the men outside rape his 2 daughters is not a novel ideal in Sodom. He didn't just conjure up that out of the thin blue air, because rape and pedophilia and child molestation was the order of the day in Sodom. That's what I'm trying to tell you folks. The Bible doesn't tell you that. I'm telling you that. And if you want to study Sodom, you will see that in fact and indeed, fornication, illicit sex, adultery, homosexuality, pedophilia, even bestiality were the order of the day in the cities of the plain, Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Zoar. This is why Lot can easily suggest that y'all can have my daughters. I know you all don't know. You don't think that deep. You think that Lot was under some great pressure and he had to dig down into the wellspring of his mind to conjure up the ideal of allowing his daughters to be fucked by angels. But I'm telling you, that's not it at all. I'm telling you that Lot, in the city of Sodom, he saw this sexual licentiousness and this sexual lasciviousness and this sexual profligation going on the daily. And so did those daughters. So did Lot's daughters. The order of the day, it was an everyday occurrence where you might see somebody being raped in Sodom. You might see a man raping a boy. You might see a woman raping a girl. You might see a woman raping a boy. You might see a man raping a girl. You might see any of that. Heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual. It was all going on in Sodom. It was commonplace to see rapes and fornication and illicit sex outdoors up against a wall under a fig tree. These people were not sexually rigid like we are today. They didn't care about nakedness and nudity. They could walk around nude and no one would look at them a second time. I'm trying to explain to you how the Sodomites were living. Sexual profligacy. To be profligate means to be, what's the word? I keep using the word, but let me give you a good definition. Profligate. Extravagant or wasteful in the use of resources. Profligate, it means to be wasteful. These people were sexually profligate. They were fucking and sucking and dropping nuts, sperm and semen, and women that, shoot that stuff out their vaginas. They were doing it all around. Wherever you walk, you could walk and you could step on a pile of sperm. Cum was everywhere. Dried up, freshly dropped cum. It was everywhere. This is what you're not going to get from the Bible. That the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Zoar, they were sexually profligate, sexually wasteful. It wasn't just about homosexuality. As I explained somewhere back in parts 2 or 3, most of you Christians and Israelites and Bible readers, you got stuck. You got horse blinders on. You got the deer in the headlights syndrome the minute you read the passage where the men of Sodom wanted the 2 angels to come out so they could get butt fucked. You stop right there. Even though in the same verse it talks about all the people from all the quarters, from every quarter, every part of the city coming to Sodom's house to get in on the sexual action. You don't see that part. You just see the men. Not understanding that in ancient times, it was always the men who led the charge. Anything that was going on, the men, 99% of the time, they led the charge. But the Bible tells us that all the people from every quarter joined in. And people are men, people are women, and people are children. We don't see that. We are so hell-bound and determined to place the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah on one little demographic of society, the gays, the LGBTQ folks circa 1700 BCE. And you're wrong. Not only that, there are Bible scriptures that suggest that there was more than homosexuality going on in Sodom. There are Bible scriptures that suggest that fornication was going on and that adultery was going on. And anybody who knows what adultery is, you know that adultery is not 2 men butt fucking. Adultery has to do with a man and a woman who are married, and one of those people, husband or wife, steps out the marriage bed, steps out the union, and has sex with someone else. That's called adultery. How could the citizens of Sodom and Gomorrah be found guilty of adultery if everybody was a gay person? Gay people don't commit adultery. Because back in those times, wasn't no gay marriage. Adultery, by definition, is a man and a woman who are married. And if the Bible says that the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah were compared to adultery, it stands to reason that adultery, that men and women, that heterosexuals, that married people lived in Sodom and Gomorrah, and they were being sexually profligate, sexually wasteful. Now you probably want a scripture on that, right? Of course you do. More proof that Sodom and Gomorrah was not strictly homosexual cities. More proof. We need go no more over there and read maybe Jeremiah the 23rd chapter. What do you make of this right here? Jeremiah the 23rd chapter. I want to show you something. Jeremiah 23rd chapter, verse 14. Put on your thinking caps for a moment, please. Put on your thinking caps as we go to Jeremiah, the 23rd chapter. And it says in verse 14, I have seen also in the prophets of Jerusalem a horrible thing. They commit adultery. Who commits adultery? They commit adultery. What is adultery? It is the union of a man and a woman who are married, and one of them steps out of the marriage to have sex with someone else. Okay, we got that. And so Jeremiah said, I have seen also in the prophets of Jerusalem a horrible thing. They commit adultery and walk in lies. They strengthen also the hands of evildoers, that none doth return from his wickedness. They are all of them unto me as who? Sodom, and the inhabitants thereof as Gomorrah. Now the smart people get it, but the ones that are not so smart, they might not get it. So let me talk about it. Here is Jeremiah talking about what the prophets of Jerusalem have seen, a horrible thing. And Jeremiah compares what's going on amongst the Israelites. He compares it with Sodom and Gomorrah. The fact that Jeremiah says that these people commit adultery is proof positive that they were heterosexual people, married men and women in Sodom and Gomorrah. Else, Jeremiah could not compare the adultery committed with these gay folks in Sodom and Gomorrah. You get it? Do you get it? I said Jeremiah, the 23rd chapter, verse 14. Jeremiah talks about the Israelites committing adultery. And he goes on to say, they are all of them unto me as Sodom. Well, wait a minute. If Sodom was a strictly gay town full of homosexuals, men and men, women and women, they could not have committed adultery, because sex, or should I say adultery, is between a man and a woman, a married man and a married woman. But if he's comparing the Israelites for committing adultery like he's comparing the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, it stands to reason that there were heterosexuals in Sodom committing adultery, that there were heterosexual married people in Gomorrah committing adultery. You got that? Now let's just do this real quick, just to put a button on that. Let's go to American Heritage Dictionary and let's look up the word adultery. Let's put a button on it. Adultery. Adultery. Adult. U-V-W. Adult. Adultery. Adultery. All right. Okay, let's look at adultery. Let's just put a button on it by giving a legal definition. I say we're going from the American Heritage Dictionary. What does it say about adultery? It's right here. Adultery. Voluntary sexual intercourse between a married person and a partner other than the lawful spouse. Got it? To be adulterous, you must be married. Now, when two people or someone just fucking all the different kind of women and fucking all the different kind of men, that's called fornication. But adultery means you must be married. It is voluntary sexual intercourse between a married person, a married man or a married woman, and a partner other than the lawful spouse, the lawful husband, or the lawful wife. Got it? Okay. So how is it then? That in the book of Jeremiah, the Israelites are compared to the Sodomites and to the people of Gomorrah? The Israelites perform adultery. And Jeremiah says they are all like those people in Sodom and they are all like those people in Gomorrah. Use your thinking caps, people. If the Israelites committing adultery, and we know what adultery is between a married couple, a man and a woman. If the Israelites are put in the same category and same box as the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, it stands to reason that there were actually heterosexual married people in Sodom and Gomorrah as well. Else, the analogy and the comparison between the Israelites and their committing adultery would not work. I know you never seen this. And we're going to get back to talking about Lot and his daughters in just a minute. But I wanted to make that point and clarify for those of you who are still on the fence about the cities being destroyed because of their homosexuality. If that were the case, if homosexuality was the only thing that they were violating, which made God destroy those cities, why would Jeremiah come along and say that the Israelites committed adultery, understanding what the word adultery means? It's the breaking of a marriage between a man and a woman to go fuck somebody outside of the marriage bed. Adultery. Why would Jeremiah come along and compare the Israelites committing adultery with what was going on in Sodom and Gomorrah? It only stands to reason that adultery was going on in Sodom and Gomorrah. And if it's adultery going on in Sodom and Gomorrah, that was between heterosexuals, that was between married people. Now let me read something else to you. We doing sources here. We breaking it down. I'm going to read from a book called The Bible as It Was. And they make that same analogy and they come to the same conclusion that Sodom and Gomorrah must have had straight heterosexual people in it too. Let's go to page 182. Page 182. Here it is. The point that I'm making is right here. I say we're reading from the book called The Bible as It Was by James L. Kugel. They make the same point. It talks about the Sodomites' sexual sin. See, If early interpreters were thus somewhat divided about Lot, they were equally perplexed about the city of Sodom. God destroyed it because of the terrible things that were being done there. But what exactly were those things? Strangely, the Genesis narrative does not say. The men of Sodom are said to be evil and very sinful. Genesis 13:13. And at one point, God observes that the Sodomites' sin is very grave. Genesis 18:20. But that is all we are told. To some interpreters, Sodom's sin seemed clear enough homosexual practices. That's what y'all want to believe. Now, after all, when the angels sent by God arrived at Lot's house, the men of Sodom, both young and old, every one of them came to surround the house and demand to have sexual relations with them. Was this not clear proof that the unnamed sin of the Sodomites consisted of just such practices, later known as a result by the word sodomy? Okay, here it is. In addition to specifically homosexual practices, some interpreters attributed to the Sodomites other heterosexual sins. You got that? In addition to specifically homosexual practices, some interpreters attributed to the Sodomites other straight people, heterosexual sins, specifically adultery and fornication. The reason is a certain verse in the book of Jeremiah. See, I just showed you that scripture in Jeremiah. They, Jerusalemite prophets, commit adultery and deal falsely and encourage evildoers so that no one repents. They are all like Sodom. See that? That's the verse I just read. Jeremiah 23:14. See? Now here it is. If God equated adulterers in Jerusalem to the people of Sodom, then it follows that the latter, meaning the Sodomites, were no less guilty of adultery than homosexual acts. As a result, Sodom became to be known generally as a place of sexual profligacy. See, I was using that word earlier. Profligate. Profligacy is from the word profligate, and profligate means wastefulness. Sexual wastefulness. Just a fuck. Wasteful sex. And so, the point being made here, if God equated adulterers in Jerusalem to the people of Sodom, then it follows that the latter, the Sodomites, were no less guilty of adultery than homosexuality. But for them to be guilty of adultery, that has to be between a man and a woman. Okay, I think y'all got the point. Well, here, look at this. Look at this is called the Testament of Levi, chapter 14, verse 6. It's another book that's not in your Bible. It's called the Testament of Levi. Look what they say. You make married women impure. You make married, not gay women, not homosexual women, heterosexual married women impure. You lie with whores, and there it is again, adulteresses. You marry heathen women, and your sexual relations will be like Sodom and Gomorrah. Look at this here. In the Testament of Levi, you have heterosexual, straight, married women again being compared with Sodom and Gomorrah. To be a whore, that's a woman who sells her body for money. To be an adulteress, that's a married woman. An adulteress, an adulterer is a man, and an adulteress is a woman. So this adulteress is a married woman who screws outside of her marriage. And it says, you marry heathen women. These are heterosexual, straight people activities. But isn't it interesting that they say all of this just to say your sexual relations will be like what? Sodom and Gomorrah. Because in Sodom and Gomorrah, you had straight men and straight women being fornicators and adulterers and adulteresses, not just homosexuals. The proof is right there if you understand what the hell is going on. The proof is right there. Are y'all following me? I am not absolving homosexual sex in Sodom and Gomorrah. No, don't get it twisted and don't get it fucked up. Homosexuality was definitely a part of the sexual makeup of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboam, and Zoar. It was. It absolutely was. My point is, for the last 2,000 years, we have honed in on one sexual demographic as to the reason for Sodom and Gomorrah's destruction: homosexuality. Don't walk away from this video saying he don't think the gays had anything to do with the destruction of Sodom. Yes, the gays did have something to do with it. But it was an amalgamation of sexual identities that was running rampant in Sodom and Gomorrah. It was the gays. It was the bisexuals. It was the heterosexuals. It was the transgenders. All of that was going on in Sodom and Gomorrah. All of that was going on. That's my point. For the last 2,000 years, the Christian church, even Islam, the Muslim world, the Jewish world, these so-called black Israelites, these so-called Hebrew Israelites, everybody wants to lay the blame for Sodom and Gomorrah's destruction squarely on the shoulder of the gays. And I'm simply here to say that the gays took part in the savagery of those 5 cities. But they're only going to get 33%. They're going to get 33% of the blame. The LGBTQ folks, the homosexuals, the gays, they get 33% of the blame for why Sodom was destroyed. The straights, the heterosexuals, they gonna get 33% of the blame for why Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed. The bisexuals, they are going to get 33% of the blame for why Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed. And that 1%, you could throw in the transgenders, the transsexuals, transgenders, men walking around just like women and women walking around just like men. They were going on too. This is what you don't understand. Now double back. Now let's double back. The Bible, again, as I said, it does not teach us about the culture of Sodom and Gomorrah. The Bible says nothing about its economy, its wealth, its poverty. The Bible says absolutely nothing about Sodom and Gomorrah as a city, its wealth. Again, its wealth. It doesn't say anything about the everyday life in Sodom and Gomorrah. That's why the Bible is an incomplete narrative. It is not a comprehensive narrative. It just throws shit against the wall and expects you to look at it. Oh, is that a piece of shit on the wall? But let me explain to you a little bit about the culture of Sodom, as I've already been doing. I've been doing it. When we look back at Lot and his two daughters, you have to understand that these were not ingenious ideals that Lot would give his daughters to the mob outside. That it wasn't an ingenious ideal that the daughters would fuck their father to get pregnant. It wasn't. The reason that the sexual motif is everywhere present in the Lot story is because the writers, the Levites who wrote Genesis 18 and Genesis 19, they actually had more knowledge about what was going on in Sodom than you do. I said the Levitical priests, those that wrote scripture about Sodom and Gomorrah and put it in the book of Genesis, they were far more versed in the socio-economic and political and sexual background of the cities of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboam, and Zoar. They just were. But because they were lazy in their literary efforts, they simply just threw the story in the book of Genesis chapter 19 without giving any background, any narrative, without talking about the socio-economic and political and sexual dynamics of those 5 cities. They just failed to let you know who they were. But the hint and the reason we know that the ancient writers understood more about Sodom and Gomorrah is because they threw in these 2 sexual stories of Lot trying to give his virgin daughters to the angry mob, and Lot's daughters making Lot drunk and then having sex with their father, a very incestuous and nasty act. They gave us some egregious, I said the Levitical writers, they gave us two egregious sexual stories, actually 3. They gave us 3 egregious sexual stories in Genesis 19. The men of Sodom wanting to fuck the angels, Lot proposing his daughters go and get fucked by the angry mob outside, and Lot's daughters getting their father drunk, having sex with their father, and getting babies by their father. 3 sexually egregious stories that the writers threw in there without commentary, without backstory, without telling you and I what the fuck was going on in Sodom, whereby these 3 nasty stories, and you gets no worse than that. You talking about raping of men, raping of children, and incest. It gets no worse than that. And so the fact that the Bible writers could put those stories in without easing into the story is proof that they already understood how bad sexually Sodom was. What they did not understand and what they did not foresee is, 3,000 years later, when you and I would read these stories, stuff that was matter-of-factly to them. Sex in Sodom was a matter-of-factly thing to the Bible writers. They knew all about the sex that was going down in Sodom. The fornication, the adultery, the homosexuality, the transvestism, the pedophilia, the bestiality, the rape, and the murder. They already knew that stuff. I'm talking about the Israelite writers. That shit was matter-of-factly information. So they didn't feel the need to preface men raping angels, to preface Lot wanted his daughters to get raped, to preface Lot's daughters fucking their father. They didn't feel the need to preface those 3 egregious sexual stories with giving us the background of the people of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboam, and Zoar. That shit was matter-of-factly. And when the Levitical priests wrote this shit, they didn't give a fuck about you and I today interpreting that stuff. They were writing in the present, in the here and now. They were writing circa 1400 BCE, when it was known and when it was commonplace that the cities of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboam, and Zoar, it was well known, public knowledge and common knowledge that any manner of lasciviousness and licentiousness and sexual profligacy was going down. It's you and I in the 20th and 21st century that are shocked by these stories. Now let me give you something else. Hebrew myths. Let me read a little about it, because I know you don't know this stuff. We're going to read from a book called Hebrew Myths, okay? Hebrew Myths is going to give us, this book will give us a little background of some of the stuff I've been talking about, okay? Let me get orange juice. Okay. Are you enjoying this? I am. Part 6. All right, we're going to read from this book here. It's called Hebrew Myths. I've had this book since the 90s. See? Lloyd Clark. See? That's my old name. I bought this on 11/15/1993. I'm not new to this. I'm true to this. Okay. Let's read a little bit about, see? The chapter is called Lot at Sodom. But what I want to do is give you a little background about the Sodomites that the Bible does not give you. Okay? Let's do it. Here it goes right here. The Sodomites were among the richest of nations. Swallow that. I said the Sodomites were among the richest of nations. For if a man needed potherbs, he would say to a slave, "Go, fetch me some." The slave would visit a field and discover gold beneath their roots. Likewise, when corn was harvested, silver, pearls, and precious stones were found to have bred beneath its stubble. Great riches, however, led men astray. A sodomite never gave so much as a crumb of bread to any stranger, and would even pole his fig trees so that no birds should eat fruit hanging out of reach. Wow. Sodom was secure against attack, yet to discourage visitors like those two angels, its citizens passed a law that whoever offered a stranger food should be burned alive. Instead, the stranger must be robbed of all he had and flung from the city stark naked. Let me stop there. Isn't this great information that the Bible does not give you? And understand, let me say this too. All of this is in the realm of mythology. These aren't literal historical stories. But what great information. What if this information was right there in Genesis 18, Genesis 19? What if we had this information as the backdrop to the Lot and Sodom Gomorrah story? You didn't know that, did you? The Bible, excuse me, the traditions, these are ancient writings that did not make the Bible. These are stories that were told just like the African griots sit around a campfire and relay the stories of the histories of the tribes in Africa. Once upon a time, a crude nation called the Hebrews, before they wrote down and compiled their holy writings, these stories were told from campfire to campfire, from hill and mountaintop, from hamlet and village. These stories were told through oral tradition. And so through oral tradition, we have a story giving us a little inkling of background about the Sodomites. And so we are told about the Sodomites, things that can help us understand how crazy and why those men and the people of the city tried to attack those angels. Number one, we find out in this book that the Sodomites were amongst the most richest people, one of the most richest nations. You thought they were a small ragtag full of homosexuals. We read now that they were among the richest nations. Yeah. We read that they were so rich that they had slaves. They had servants, maidens and servants and handmaidens, butlers and shit, chauffeurs and shit. They were rich. They were rich. And when a rich Sodomite told his slave, go fetch me some plants, some herbs. The slave would visit a field and discover gold. You know, gold, that's a motherfucker, that's rich. There was gold in the ground. When the slave went to pull up the celery sprouts and the corn and the okra, he would discover something gold looking. He would scratch the ground and dig a little deeper under the ground, under the dirt, and found gold. There's gold in them there hills. I tell you, Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboam, and Zoar had some of the most fertile and richest land to grow crops. We are being told that when a slave would go out there to harvest lettuce and cabbage and shit, right beneath the cabbage and the lettuce and the corn and the okra, they would find gold. They didn't have to dig, miles down or feet down. It was gold right under the surface of the goddamn crops. We are then told, likewise, when they went to the cornfields to harvest the corn, they would find silver and pearls and precious stones right under the corn stalks. This is why they were so goddamn rich. Gold, silver, pearls, precious stones are found right beneath the surface of the corn and the lettuce and the carrots. Right there. This land was rich as fuck. They said they had so many great riches that it made men go astray. See, the city was so rich. And this is why those 5 cities were a confederation. This is why these cities were closed off to everybody else. They didn't want to share their wealth, and they didn't want other people from outside knowing that just beneath the surface of the lettuce and the carrots and the corn, there was gold and silver and precious metals and stones and shit. Shh, don't tell nobody. We are sitting on a landmine of wealth. Shh, don't tell the strangers. These 5 cities were stingy as fuck. Yeah. Yeah. They became so stingy. I said, these sodomites, with all this gold and silver and pearls and precious stones at their disposal, they became so rich. And in their richness, they became aloof and they became stingy as fuck. This book says a sodomite never gave so much as a crumb of bread to a stranger. They didn't want strangers in their cities. They didn't want a homeless community. Everybody was rich. Don't be giving out. Don't be, you start giving to one stranger, you got to give to another stranger. And strangers come from far and wide, go, oh, let's go to Sodom and Gomorrah. They will feed us. You know, they care about us. And the Sodomites were so strict. They were so insanely strict about not feeding strangers, about keeping the secret of the gold mine that they sat upon, that they closed ranks. I said Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Zoar. The cities, the 5 cities in the Bible in Genesis that are called the cities of the plain, they closed ranks. They became a confederation. They became a union. They became a United Nations, and they said, don't let nobody outside of us 5 nations know about the wealth that we sitting on. They were so stingy. They were so adamant about protecting their wealth that they closed ranks and formed a community, a union. EU, a European Union. Those 5 cities. And then once they decided that they were going to close ranks and protect one another from outside forces and outside influences, they made laws that would get you murdered, get you unalived for giving strangers a morsel of bread. That's right. This book says Sodom was secure against attack because they had 5 other nations that they were in league with, that they were confederate with. And yet, to discourage visitors, the citizens of Sodom and Gomorrah and Admah and Zeboim and Zoar, they passed a law that whoever offers a stranger food should be burned alive. They're going to kill you for giving a stranger a piece of bread. That's how fucked up these people were. That's how serious they were about keeping the wealth in the family. Don't give them motherfuckers not even a crumb of bread. And we will burn you alive if we catch one of the citizens of Sodom and Gomorrah feeding a stranger. We will kill you. They also were going to say that a stranger, someone who came, who wasn't from one of those 5 cities, they were to be robbed of all they had and flung out of the city bucket ass naked. Just in case you didn't see, you don't remember reading it. See? Sodom was secure against attack. Yet to discourage visitors, like those 2 angels that came to Sodom, its citizens passed a law that whoever offered a stranger food should be burned alive. These motherfuckers in Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Zoar, they were serious about keeping the secrecy of their wealth and keeping their wealth to themselves. It goes on, instead, the stranger must be robbed. You get jacked. Break yourself, fool. Break yourself, fool. The stranger must be robbed of all he had and flung from the city stark naked. Goddamn. I'm giving you an insight. Imagine if this information were in the Genesis narrative. Imagine. But now that you know that, why would someone like Lot want to live in a city and a society like Sodom? Isn't that interesting? I said, why would Lot, a married heterosexual man, why would he want to live in a society like that? You think maybe Lot was about just as bad as those people? These rules, these laws, these societies were set up long before Lot decides to pitch his tent to build a house in Sodom. Why would he want to do that? You think maybe Lot was on the same wavelength as these motherfuckers? You think maybe Lot was as evil and wicked as these people that wouldn't give a stranger a morsel of bread, that would set on fire a person for feeding a stranger, that if a stranger came to town, they would rob that motherfucker blind, strip him of his clothes, his loincloth, his sandals, and run that bastard out of town bucket naked? This is where Lot decides to settle down. What does that say about Lot? That he would want to live in such a city, in such a nation, and raise children in such a city and a nation. And so we are told, that Lot probably was just like them. Going back to the book, the Bible as it was, again by James L. Kugel, they write, if the text observes quite needlessly at this point in the story that the men of Sodom were evil sinners, then why did Lot move in with them? See? If the text, meaning the Bible, quite needlessly at this point in the story, that the men of Sodom were evil sinners, then why did Lot move in with them, with a wife and daughters and sons. Certainly he could have pitched his tent elsewhere in the valley. Perhaps, after all, he was not much better than the wicked men of Sodom. Got it? Perhaps, after all, he was not much better than the wicked men of Sodom, whom at one point later on, Lot addresses as my brothers. I talked about that in part 3 and part 4. That my brothers is a term of endearment. My brothers is I love you. My brothers means that these people, the men of Sodom, were sacred and close to Sodom. So much so that Lot would call these men that wanted to rape these angels, he called them my brothers. Genesis 19:7. See? And although Lot is saved from Sodom before its destruction, his subsequent doings are hardly exemplary. You know, when he told those angry men out there, you can go ahead and fuck my virgin daughters. When he allowed himself to get drunk so that his 2 daughters can have incestuous sex with him on a mountain. Yeah, his subsequent doings are hardly exemplary. And we go on. And some other folks got some shit to say about him. But when a man is wicked like Lot, then the members of his household are likewise wicked. See? And God said to him, Lot's shepherd, I said to Abraham that I would give this land to his sons, and not to that wicked man Lot, as you suppose. That's from this person here. I can't even say his name. It's a rabbi, though. Persecuta Rabbata Biom Ha Shemini 3. You got it. Just screenshot it and then go research it. But this person says, calls Lot wicked to his sons and not to that wicked man Lot, as you suppose. Now let's go back to this one. But when a man is wicked like Lot, then the members of his household are likewise wicked. Who are the members of Lot's household? His wife, his so-called virgin daughters, his other daughters, and his son-in-laws. Let's talk about it. Now we're going to bring it full circle. Full circle we go. Full circle we go. Back to Lot. We read in part 5 that the daughters of Lot, when they left Zoar, they went up into a mountain. Lot and his 2 virgin daughters, they go up into a mountain. And his daughters, they look down from the mountain and they see the 4 cities of Sodom and Gomorrah and Admah and Zeboim. Flames are blazing, smoke billowing, pillars of smoke and fire. We are told that the older daughter says to the younger daughter, basically, if I can paraphrase it, put it in my own words, this is the end of the world. There's no more world. There's no more humans. Oh my. It's me and you, sister, and daddy. And nobody else. What we gonna do? What we gonna do? I got an ideal baby sister. It's just me, you, and daddy. And the rest of the world has been burned with fire and brimstone. And once daddy dies and we die, there's no more humans on earth. You know what we should do? We should make our father pregnant impregnate us, since we're the only three people on earth, and we can repopulate the earth through our father's seed. This is the harebrained scheme. This is the nutty worldview of the older daughter of Lot. The younger daughter, she's like, oh, okay, whatever you say, big sister, whatever you say. I'm paraphrasing it for you all. And then we are told that the sisters concoct a brew of wine, some MD 2020 circa 1700 BCE, some Mad Dog 2020, some Night Train circa 1700 BCE wine, and they gets this motherfucker drunk, their father. And after they get their father drunk, they don't tell us that it was a nasty thing. They don't tell us that they had to, cover daddy's face up. They don't tell us that they had to think long and hard about seeing their father's nakedness and then giving him a blowjob and then having sex, getting on top of him and letting daddy come in them. This story is matter-of-factly. Why is it a matter-of-factly story that two supposed virgins, we're talking about 12 and 13 and 14-year-old girls, two of them. What is it in their psyche that would make them think that the answer is to fuck their own father? And I surmise and submit to you people that the reason that these two daughters could easily fuck and suck their father and get impregnated by their biological father is that again, going back to the beginning, it was commonplace. It was an everyday occurrence in the cities of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboam, and Zoar. They were sexually profligate. I just showed you that in these different books. If they had not been raised and reared in a sexually profligate city, perhaps they would have had no notion to do such a dastardly thing like fuck their father. But seeing sex in Sodom, again, at the sake of being redundant, was an everyday encounter, an everyday thingy, that these young virgin girls, they saw sex in Sodom just like when we walk out of our house and see somebody walking their dog down the sidewalk. Sex was just that open. It's the same thing for Lot. The reason that Lot could suggest that the angels take his virgin daughters and fuck the bejesus out of them is because it was a regular, everyday occurrence in these sexually profligate cities. It was no big deal. It didn't take much thinking. It didn't take much thinking. And so from the daughter's point of view, from the two young virgin daughters, although we are told they are virgins, they are light years ahead in the sexual game. They've seen homosexuality in their city. They've seen bisexuality. They've seen lesbianism. They've seen transvestism. They've seen bestiality. They've seen children being violated, pedophilia by adults. They've seen it all. These two virgin daughters, they've seen it all. This is why they are open to the suggestion that they violate their own father. They've seen it. It is part of the sexual makeup of the cities of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboam, and Zoar. The cities of the plain. This is how they were living. So while you and me are aghast are blown away or in awe that two little 12, 13-year-old virgin girls could think up a scheme whereby they get their father intoxicated and fuck their father to them. They were numb. They were just numb to sex. Sex in Sodom was an everyday thing, is what I'm trying to tell you. And this is what the Bible doesn't tell us. We just get the fact that they did that stupid shit. They really thought they were the last three people on earth. Now let's talk about Lot for a moment. This motherfucker. What kind of man, what kind of father allows his daughters to get him drunk? What kind of father allows daughters to get the father drunk? Now, you know the saying, first time shame on you, second time shame on me. This was 2 nights in a row. What was going through Lot's mind that he would allow his daughters to manipulate him into drunken stupor unconsciousness 2 nights in a row? What was going through that motherfucker's mind? Lot was supposed to be the daddy. Lot was supposed to be the Abba. Lot was supposed to be the father. Lot was supposed to be the protector. Lot was supposed to be the brains. Lot was supposed to be the guide up in those mountains. You know, in those mountains, there's wolves and snakes and all kind of crazy animals. What was going on in Lot's mind that he would drop his guard from the elements of being up in mountains where there's lions and tigers and bears? Oh my! Snakes and scorpions and wolves and shit. What would make him drop his guard as a protector, as the father of 2 virgin girls, to lay his black ass down there and let these girls manipulate him into unconsciousness? 2 times. You know, the girls are girls. They mischievous, and they thought they were doing a good thing. They thought they were preserving humankind, you know, whatever. If they had a baby, you know, the human species would continue. But look at Lot's actions. This motherfucker is spineless on every occasion. Why, Lot, would you allow yourself to drink so much wine that you would be oblivious to your surroundings, that anything could have happened to your beautiful virgin daughters once you were passed out? Lot is no protector. Lot is no protector. And even if Lot did it the first night with his firstborn daughter, surely Lot would wake up. When you're that kind of drunk, when you are that kind of drunk where you don't even know that your daughter is sucking your cock, when you are that kind of drunk, you don't even know that your eldest daughter is riding your dick like the Lone Ranger rides Silver. When you so drunk that you don't know that your daughter is riding you in a reverse cowboy, up and down and banging your dick until you ejaculate up inside her. And when you're that drunk, and then you wake up the next day, surely you're going to have an Excedrin headache number 99. Surely you're going to wake up from that drunken stupor and go, God damn, Doris, what the fuck happened to me last night? Y'all go give me some herbs. I got a major migraine. Oh, I need to vomit. Oh, I need to go ride the porcelain pony. The toilet. Oh, woozy. I'm just going to lay here and chill today. I got to get my wits back. You girls, y'all gave me some strong ass alcohol and I drank too much. I am not doing that again. When you that drunk, generally speaking, that'll make you put down the bottle for a while. You don't want to feel the bed is moving. Oh, there's no bed. The world is moving. Every time Lot lay down, oh, the world is spinning. He's so drunk. Okay, it happened once. But the Bible wants us to believe that Lot was so fucked up and out of his mind, out of his faculties, and not in charge of his environment and his situation, that they did it a second night. The fuck is going on with Lot? Not to mention, people, it's hard to comprehend, not once but twice, that a man not know that he's had sex. I get it. Some people can be so inebriated that they wake up and they're not sure if they fucked last night. I get it. There's no signs. They were virgins, which means they had their hymens, and their hymens had to be broken, which means blood came out, and the blood would be all on his dick and in his pubic region, pubic hairs. Did they clean him up that good that Lot didn't smell or see any evidence of sex with a virgin? Crazy people. And so as I close, the main point I want you to understand on this one is that Lot offering his virgin daughters to the angry mob, it was commonplace and everyday shit in Sodom and Gomorrah. Number one. Number two, Lot fucking his daughters was an everyday occurrence in the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. There were many men that took advantage of their daughters. That was daily. Number three, seeing an angry mob bum rush a stranger, stripping him naked, butt fucking him, and then throwing him out the city. That was an everyday occurrence. It was no real big deal when those angels knocked on Lot's door and wanted to have sex with the angels. Lot had seen it before. His wife had seen it before. His virgin daughters had seen it before. His other children had seen it before. They had seen sexual violence growing up in Sodom all of their lives. It wasn't no great new scene. Wasn't no great new scene. And as we ask the question also, why would Sodom want to raise children and have a wife in such a volatile and dangerous environment? What was that all about? It was well understood that the Sodomites were murderers and rapists and into pedophilia and bestiality and homosexuality and fornication and adultery. Who in their right mind would want to settle in a city like that when they got virgin daughters and a beautiful wife? Lot, that's who. Which means that Lot wasn't much better than the men of Sodom, even going to the point of calling the men of Sodom his brothers or his brethren, which is a term of endearment. My God. That Lot was a nasty motherfucker. And with that, y'all, we'll see you back for part 7. Oh, we're not done. We'll see you part 7. Peace.